Thanks for joining us this week on Email Geeks at Home Drinking Coffee. Join your hosts Chris Marriott and Paul Schreiner each week as they talk email marketing, life, purpose, faith, but mainly email marketing. If you're looking for some normalcy in these crazy times, you've come to the right place.
Welcome back to Email Geeks at Home Drinking Coffee. We are still at home. We are still drinking coffee. My name is Paul Schreiner, one of the founders at Audience Point. With me, I have the venerable Christopher Marriott. Well, I mean, with me, I have the venerable.
First time, Christopher Marriott, Chris Marriott. And, as I've said in the past, you keep me guessing every week on where I come in. But Chris Marriott, here I am, delighted to join Paul. And Paul, who's our sponsor today?
Our sponsor today, Chris, is Audience Point. And as you know, Chris, the theme of this season is the builders, the makers, the doers, right? The ones that sort of do it. And we're right smack dab in the middle of a product development building effort. And so it hits close to home on a daily basis. I mean, the energy inside Audience Point right now around product development, the stuff we're building, we're so excited to share. And so, in the next couple of months, we should start be able to have some product announcements that are going to be public. Pretty excited about that. So anyway,
And that's really, well said, Paul. And really what we hope this season, the Builders does is inspire those of you, whether you're building software, whether you're building an email program, whether you're building, like our guest today, a hit series on Netflix, that other stories of people who have built great things help you achieve your goals in building.
Right.
And if we do that, this will have been a great season. We'll look back with pride. So with that, we'll go right to our guest and introduce her and get started with the show.
Sounds perfect.
And we're back with our guest, Courtney Hazlett. Very excited to have Courtney with us today. She's the SVP Development Out East Entertainment, but much more exciting for Paul and I is she's also the creator and the executive producer of one of our favorite COVID lockdown series on Netflix, Restaurants on the Edge, which we've already enjoyed seasons 1 and 2. So Courtney, delighted to have you here today to talk about how you managed to build such a successful entertainment franchise. As we talked about last week when we had the pre-show, this season is about the builders, and you certainly qualify as a builder building a, again, fully Paul Grinny's like, I've got the creator of my favorite show on. So we're delighted to have you join us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
And Paul, before we get into your fanboy questions, of which I know there are many, should we talk about what we're drinking?
I think that's a good way to start.
Tradition is important, even in a podcast.
Right.
Do you want to go first?
I would love to, Chris. I'm actually drinking hydration stuff today.
Wow.
I know. It's a Beachbody hydration drink. With how hot it's been in Tennessee, anytime I exercise, I'm just exhausted, so as much water I can get in my system, it needs to stick.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. That's, very interesting.
That was a deep dive. That was a deep dive.
yeah, I know. Hopefully the audience is still with us after that exciting announcement. Courtney, what about you?
I can't follow that up, really. Ice cream
Who
tea.
could? I know. That's why I went
that.
to you. I couldn't go to my own. So you have what are you drinking?
Oh, sorry, ice green tea. Not
green
very
tea.
glamorous. It has nothing to do with my beach body, which I should probably be working on. But
well, fortunately.
People who are just listening are like, what's going on? Paul is motioning at his. No, we're good.
No. Fortunately, if you are only a listener. So I, as back to normal, drinking Santo Domingo coffee from the Dominican Republic. And Paul, what do you know about the Dominican Republic?
It's an island nation. I believe it splits the same landmass as Haiti, Chris.
Yeah.
I also had an all expense paid trip there right before COVID hit, which I believe you you know about, which is why you do this every week.
And then what happened to that trip?
Well, my mother-in-law was coming out to watch our 5 kids, and we could not get out of the country, and it got canceled, and we got lots of great time with our kids at home.
That's great. I promised my wife I wouldn't bring it up this week. She said, you need to be nicer to Paul. So technically, I didn't bring it up.
That's true. That
coaxed it out of you. So, but a letter of the law, I did not violate what my wife Betsy asked me to do. All right, back to Courtney. So we were talking last week. I mean, there's so many things that we want to drill down to that civilians like Paul and I don't understand around television series production. You launched the show this year, 2020, on Netflix. Season 1 came out, was it in March or April?
I believe it was technically February 28th, so let's call it March.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
So, but that's February 28th, 2020. When did you first come up with the idea for the show that eventually became Restaurants on the Edge?
I think if my math is correct, it may not be correct, but I think if my math is correct, it would be summer of 2018 is when I developed the concept and pitched it and got the green light. Then we started filming January of 2019. And then you saw it on the service the following winter of 2020.
Wow. So
there's some runway there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just come up with an idea, shoot a pilot, get green light, and you're on air. I mean, that was, if my math is correct, year and a half?
Yeah, about a year and a half in the making. It's like you go from green light to pre-production pretty quickly, but for a show as logistically complicated as ours, pre-production was a pretty heavy lift. And so, we had just one film crew, so we didn't have to concern ourselves with hopscotching crews, which is a way a lot of shows that do a lot of heavy travel operate. But we still had to, find these restaurants, and we did not have boots on the ground in the countries that we went to. So it was all done remotely out of our production office in Toronto, Canada. And then once we were shooting, it was kind of off to the races. We wrapped in late August. And it takes from August till you saw it launch in February for Netflix to translate it into all the languages it gets translated into, dub it. There's different art for different users' algorithms. So if, for example, Paul tends to watch a lot of action shows, then you're going to see key art that has some sort of action in it, and your trailer is going to look like that. For example, it might have the scene from the Hawaii episode where they're going down the steepest hill in North America to get to Valley of the Kings.
Yeah.
You watch more documentary style things, then your key art, your trailer, things like that are going to have more of an artistic treatment. So there's a lot that goes on with the Netflix machinery after you deliver. And they can't do it until all of the episodes are done because of Netflix. So it's not like a typical linear platform where you can deliver and air and be working on the back half while the front half is on your television.
Now, your history was sort of entertainment reporting with MSNBC, I think. What was the inspiration to go from that to, again, a pretty cool travel, food, culture show? What was the inspiration there?
I wanted a cooler job. No, I'm kidding.
There are worse reasons.
No, that's not it at all. Actually, I spent 7 or 8 years at various positions within the NBC universe, MSNBC being one of them. I was also, covering a lot of entertainment for the Today Show. I was doing some correspondent work for some of the related O&Os. Toward the end of my time there, I started really working with the digital parts of the network and shaping stories for those different digital outlets, helping the editorial rise to its best self for the .com platform versus the broadcast platform versus the Twitter story, that sort of thing. So I had spent my time really shaping myself as a storyteller and getting better at it, all against the backdrop of entertainment and pop culture. So I kind of just reached a point where I thought, all these shows that I'm covering and all these films that I'm covering and all this magical storytelling that I'm covering, I want to get all up in that. And so I decided to make the switch. And it was great because I really believe that everything I learned while I was there and being on that side of production gives me a lot of insight to this side of production.
That makes it.
We probably should have asked this earlier, but on the outside chance that there is a listener who hasn't actually watched the show yet, shame on you if that is you. Describe the show and describe what led you to come up with the idea, because we talked a little bit about that last week.
Sure. I think both of those questions can be sort of wrapped into one answer. I came up with the idea when I was eating at a restaurant here in Los Angeles that had a great view and also had great food. And I thought, generally the rule of thumb is the better the view, the worse the food.
Right.
And so what if we went around to restaurants all over the world and found a place with a great view, and it could be on a mountaintop, it could be on a river, it could be on the beach, anything, just someplace with a great view and, a lesser dining experience. And we help them out. And I wanted it to be, and I believe it is, a really uplifting show. This is not going to be one of those screaming and yelling shows. This is how do we kind of take a queer eye approach to helping out a restaurant and really uplifting the owners while we're at it. And so that was the goal, and hopefully that's what comes through.
For me, loud and clear, right? Like I thought one of the things that you just nailed was you found, it wasn't just restaurants, you found stories, right? You found the stories of the people that were so endearing. And before you got on, I was telling Chris, I watched the Okanagan Valley episode, and I'm from Washington State, and it's not, I'm Western Washington, that's Eastern, but it's close enough, right? And what I thought was so spectacular is you did a fantastic job of both sort of capturing the culture of the region while respecting the story and really treating people as valuable and not just something you're exploiting for dollars, right? I watched and I was like, man, if that's what they're, because when I watched Okanagan Valley, I was like, that's Okanagan Valley, right? You captured it. And so if you did that with Okanagan Valley, you did that with Slovenia, you did that with Malta, like you've done it everywhere. I didn't need to fact check anymore, right? Okay. So I think part of what I thought was really spectacular was the stories that you were able to find. Was that part of your selection process when you were sort of fishing? Like, I'm curious, did you show up in Slovenia and go, we need to find a restaurant here? Or how did you do that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Slovenia there. In that case, yes, because the restaurant we had found, we didn't realize there was a miscommunication about its historic preservation status, and we wouldn't have been able to do any renovation. So I got a call at 10 a.m. Slovenian time while I was here in Los Angeles. That was one of the few shoots I wasn't on. So it was maybe 4 o'clock in the morning here in Los Angeles from our producer on the ground. She's like, I've got some bad news. We need a new restaurant. So we had about 8 hours to find one. And that was a stressful day, but all these things happen for a reason. And the restaurant owners of Mouch is the restaurant there, were just fantastic and lovely. Oh my gosh, I know. And because we did our cultural homework, we did not have to change a lot of our locations surrounding the restaurant that we were visiting. So it's the restaurant and the owners are one story, and then how we figure out how to dovetail that into what's culturally relevant in the country or the city is another one. And if we've done our job right, they're going to intersect no matter who that restaurant owners are. Now there might be a difference if we've produced something that relates directly, like in Austria, one of the owners comes from a long line of cowbell artists.
Yeah, I loved that.
And so we produce that visit on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's personal, but the majority of those stops along the way are just cultural touchstones. So backing up a little bit in terms of casting the restaurants, they had to have a story. That's why you don't see us going to big chain restaurants.
Right.
We're not going to restaurants inside of hotel chains.
Right.
They're mostly family owned or, people with a real story. And then, we get the best 4 or 5 we can that appear to fit the bill and winnow it down. So we find the one that, is going to be most comfortable on camera, the ones who want to work with us, just all the stuff that goes into special sauce.
But did you say, we want to go to Finland, we want to go to Hong Kong, we want to go to St. Lucia, we want to go to Malta, and we're going to find restaurants there? Or
what's my travel bucket list?
Yeah, right. It's just where I wanted to go. No, it was not that. The fact that Netflix is a global platform and not just a North American platform or something, and I developed this specifically with Netflix in mind 100% of the time. I was like, this is where I think a show like this belongs. Knowing that, what are their parameters that I have to deliver on, and being global was one of them. And it couldn't be, global light. Like, we're going to be, just north of the equator or just south of the equator. So that's how you end up getting a show that's everywhere from St. Lucia to Hong Kong to Austria to Slovenia to Finland. We tried to hit them all.
Right.
And did they apply, or did, it's still, I hate to keep it coming back to the same question. Did you go to Finland and say, hey, we're looking for a restaurant that meets this criteria, and then 4 or 5 would apply and you pick one, like you said? Or
no, I mean, with a show that hadn't come out yet, when we did all this casting, we didn't have the luxury of applications. Once the show began to air, we started getting tons of emails saying,
I bet.
my parents' restaurant, I've been working at this place for 18 years, and I'm not even telling the owners I'm writing this email, but they fit the bill and they could really use your help. Getting those from around the world. What we did was, once we had narrowed down on a location, then when we could, involve the tourism board, who was often very, very helpful in saying, here's an area not a lot of people know about. Finland is a great example of that. That's how we ended up not in Helsinki.
Right.
And instead we were in this magical city that, it was the most delightful owners. And that ended up being one of my favorite episodes, and a place it's imperative that I go back.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the other thing, I'm going to cut you off, Paul, because I got another family. But one of the,
don't fight over me, guys.
And I want to get back to the building of it, but I also want to, to me, one of the things that makes a show great, and that I loved about it, and my wife loved about it, was there's something for everybody. By that I mean, if you're a foodie, there's food. If you're a travel log type person, I frankly loved the footage, of Finland and Malta and Slovenia, places I've been to Finland, but not, places that I haven't been or haven't spent a lot of time at, and just, looking at all the different, whether it's in the cities or in the countryside, you had great, stunning visuals of everywhere you went. But you had, so somebody likes travel logs, that very attractive. Mm-hmm. Somebody likes food shows, very attractive. But also the artisans. The visits. My wife, I think most of all, loved, because she's really into design. So I think she really liked the design elements. And more than she liked it all. But that was what. So everybody had sort of their thing that they could take out of the show and say, that's what I'm really looking for.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. You totally picked up on something that was super intentional. The flip side of that is some of the reviews of the show where critics are like, I thought I was getting a design show, and what am I bothering with food? And so you can't please everyone, but at the same time, I felt like those were 3 essential elements to a successful restaurant. The way it runs, the way it looks, and the way the food tastes.
Yep.
And so in building this show, there were times when I thought about, well, could one person wear 2 hats? Mm-hmm. Do we need all 3? Because once you have 3, you're producing 3 stories, or, like 3 different, each talent went to 3 different places. So that's 9 stories you're producing. It's a heavy lift. And right. So I played with, maybe we can combine roles, maybe it's a duo who goes on all 3. And ultimately, it just made the most sense to really have each of those 3 buckets with talent that owned it completely and wholly. And so that's how we ended up with that. And, you know, also something for everyone, when you said that initially, one of my thoughts went to, it was really important for me to be able to show this show to my kids.
Right.
I have 2 young children, and mom was on the road for a collective 7 months off and on. And it was important for me to be able to say, this is what I was doing, and for them to enjoy it.
Right.
And so that's not to say I tried to have everyone just work at an elementary school age level, you know, but, you know, they did. And I don't know if you can hear that right now. I don't know what my first grader's doing on the ceiling above me where his room is, distance learning. But,
I have 5.
You know,
I'm tuning it all out.
Exactly. It's a whole new world. Anyway, it was important for this to be kind of they call it co-viewing in a lot of places, but you know, parents can sit with their kids, who can sit with the grandparents, and there's something for everybody in it.
Right. So, but the Suits at Netflix, I noticed when I was rewatching the shows, slapped it with the TV 14, and I was, you know, where did that come? I mean, I would watch it with anybody, like you said, I'd watch it from my grandmother down to, you know,
I
the
have an
youngest
answer
kid in
for
the
you.
house.
In the Slovenia episode, somebody smokes.
Oh.
So the whole series gets a TV 14.
Somebody smokes, and I feel like there was one other, like maybe someone said, we didn't drop any F-bombs. We always muted those out, but maybe there was some other like slight language infraction, but the smoking for sure.
Right.
And they're still really smoking a lot in Slovenia, so
internationally, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One note I made, well, a couple notes. One thing that I thought was really interesting was how aggressive your cinematography was, just the visuals. Because, you know, for people who haven't seen the show, I mean, there's a lot of, and you know, me not being Mr. Cameraman or camera person, I thought, man, it seems like lots of drone footage, lots of panning, really, but makes a really compelling, just the technical aspect of it compelling, drawing you into the stories, reinforce the stories themselves. And I thought, and I don't know, Netflix thing or something you brought. Tell me about that.
No, it was super intentional. Our directors, Rob Bruner and Justin Harding, are really good with, you know, imbuing a very cinematic touch to their television. And that was important to me to elevate it from, you know, just another non-scripted show. You know, it's like just how I said, this is not a show where you're going to get yelling in the kitchen. The cinematography was going to be another aspect that takes it out of the bucket you're used to seeing cooking shows in. You know, those food beauties alone, even when you're watching the chef in the beginning who's not making great food, they're still making it look really good, or at least making his technique look good, which makes the character more compelling because you're thinking like, wow, this guy has so much potential.
Right.
This woman has so much potential.
You can do this.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, how a show looks definitely contributes to some quiet storytelling without having to come out and tell it.
Well, and I'll tell you where it really hit home was the Hong Kong episode when you guys are in, I don't remember the name. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And, you know, the restaurant is like 7 feet across, and yet you still have this amazing technical visual imagery. And I'm watching, I'm like, how? I don't even know what they're doing, but it's magical. So, you know, that's when it really, I was like, okay, no, this is a thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, I like to take questioning a little different direction. I don't know if that's okay with you, Chris.
It depends.
One of the things that I think is so inspiring to me, and it may just be that I've listened to way too many podcasts and episodes about women in Hollywood, but you've been able to accomplish an awful lot with what it seems like more barriers because of your gender. Has that been something you've experienced? Because again, I think what you've done is absolutely spectacular. and it needs no underscoring. But at the same time, I think taking a moment to reflect and go, well done. What has that
Thank
been
you.
like?
It's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's also in development, who's also a woman, yesterday, and I said to her, "There's this conflict that arose last week," and I told her how I, stood up for myself in the situation. I just said, "It's just so exhausting to have to keep fighting for like what you deserve. Just because like if we're a guy, you wouldn't say that.
Right.
So that kind of thing happens. We're lucky to be in a time where there's a lot more focus on inclusivity, especially for, the BIPOC community within filmmaking and television making, both in front of and behind the camera. So it's a good time to be in this, but nonetheless, 100%, there's still a lot of people at the top who are used to doing things the way they're used to doing them. And even when the intention to change is there's often still a lot of pushback. Well, I always hired this person.
Right.
Or this is who I've always worked with, that sort of thing. And I think that kind of systemic reluctance is what a lot of minority, groups are up against, and definitely more so than me as a white woman. The BIPOC community is like rolling their eyes like, listen, we've been at this forever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like as a white woman, I'm still under a great deal of privilege. If we're talking about, just is there a difference in gender and the way people approach you, 100%. And I sure saw that in my first career too, where at the time, literally every person in a major position of power was a man.
Right.
All the presidents of the networks, I was lucky to have immediate bosses who, for the most part, were women, but, at the very, very top, it was all men.
Yeah.
And, that certainly is coming around. My television show, my pilot at ABC, I love the fact that our showrunner is a woman. Our executives at our studio that we're reporting into are women, and the executives at the network are women. So this is an incredible, like, sneaky, like, hey, women are building this television show.
Right.
And it's not just a show meant for women. It's a show meant for everyone. So, there's definitely a pendulum swinging. How quickly is that swinging?
Right.
Just to say.
And I want to make sure we talk about Triage, which is the show to which you refer, so you can get us excited about what's coming down. But let me take a step back again, back in the challenges of creating a series, whether you're a man or woman or whatever. You had a great idea, but Paul has great ideas all the time. Paul has great ideas. I have a great idea for a series.
I have a list of great ideas I'm happy to go through with you, Courtney.
I have a great idea. Yeah, I'm happy to go through I have one great idea. But anyway, so you have a great idea. What do you do next? I mean, what did you do when you said, you said, I think it's a great idea. You probably ran it by a few people. They said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay. Do you shoot emails out to the networks? Do you call people? What do you do? How do you get the ball rolling?
You develop. Most of the time, or let's just say a large majority of the time in the unscripted world, pitches are kind of like, here's my idea, here's a sizzle, what 30 seconds might look like, and then like I'll kind of spitball some other stuff about it. And hey, if that works for you, great. But I had never made a show in the unscripted space. And so I knew I had to be super, super buttoned up. And so I really took a scripted approach to the non-scripted space. And I broke my show down into, this is what happens in Act 1, this is what happens in Act 2. And I broke it down to the minute what was going on. And then we kind of dummy cast restaurants so that we could have great visuals. They were stills, but great visuals. And, that showed these are the corners of the world. This is the restaurant. These are the owners. Stuff you could get from the internet, essentially. We didn't talk to any of them, but all this is clear. I think the only place in that original deck that we ended up going to was the Okanagan Valley.
Okay.
But the restaurant we found on the internet was like this Mexican restaurant at the top of this hiking trail. And it was like, well, how's that work? Like, who wants to do that? Like, you know, like that seems fish out of water. And the idea, you know, the pitch was, how can we imbue local flavors? How can we, like, you know, the owners want to make Mexican food? Great, make Mexican food. But how do you get the people who are tourists or the locals who like want their comfort food? Like,
Right.
how do you cater to them as well? So anyway, I would say the last piece of the puzzle was actually the talent.
Yeah.
And because I needed my show to be my show to be my show.
Right.
Not like my talent to say, oh, well, this is what I want to do. This is what I do. So it was kind of the last part of the puzzle was like, this is the show I've created. Does it sound good to you? You know, do you want to be a part of it? And once I kind of put all those together, I called Netflix and said, this is my idea. Let me come and convince you. And that's what I did. I was lucky that the first pitch got the green light, but
wow.
in most scenarios, or in many scenarios, you are going to shop it around. But there's a difference between the non-scripted space in linear TV versus streaming TV. If the time Quibi didn't even exist, you know, so like that's a different show. So what I did was I realized I really just made a show that would probably be a streamer. First choice is Netflix. Let me go here. You know, the safer way to do it is to kind of take a step back, make it a little bit more, when I say people pleasing, I mean like pleasing to more outlets, up your odds, you know, maybe I'll pitch something to 10 and 2 will kind of be interested and 1 will bite, but I kind of throw all my eggs in one basket. I just choose to make a specific story and run with it, and really have a point of view. That's one thing being my old job taught me. It was like, you need to have a point of view.
Yep.
And stick with it. And so that's what I did.
And there's a reason why, because you had another partner in this, and I heard you talk about it on another show. There's a reason why 2 of your 3 on-camera people are Canadian.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the studio that helped us make this, Marvel Media out of Toronto, obviously Canadian. We were able to fund a lot of this show via Canadian tax credits. Netflix doesn't just like say, okay, how much is it going to cost? Let me write you a check. You know, they say,
right.
We're going to air it. We're going to pay for these rights, but you still have to come up with the cost of production if you're not a solely in-house Netflix original, like a Nailed It or something like that. And so we partnered with a Canadian production company. And when you are taking advantage of Canadian tax credits, you have to abide by many of their rules, which are designed to incorporate Canadian talent, infrastructure, so on and so forth, so that you're putting jobs in Canada, which all makes sense. Which
totally
all
makes
makes
sense,
right? So all of our post was done in Canada. All of our crew was Canadian, and 2 out of our 3 hosts were also Canadian.
I can't think of a kinder anything. You know what I mean? Having all of those Canadians with you. Such kind.
There's a lot of people saying, I'm sorry.
You're right.
Right. But Nick, the restaurateur, was from his. The way you sourced him was interesting as well. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically at his restaurant, and that when I say that, like,
oh, is that
like,
true?
oh,
I didn't know
That's
that part.
true. Yes, that was a leading
it's a good
question.
restaurant. It's not terrible. So, you know, we pulled Nick into it at the end as well.
You know what's great is, you know, however you found these people, none of whom knew each other. Obviously before the show. I mean, and Malta was Malta the first one you filmed?
No, it was next to the last.
Oh, that's right. You said you filmed the Canadian one first. But even, I mean, you can't tell that these people haven't, are sort of just getting to know each other. I mean, they really clicked. And I think that was another big factor. I mean, they're really likable. They really clicked and worked well together. And I'm sure that was a relief since you had to sort of, bring 3 disparate people together.
Right.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. And that's also a good place to give shout outs to the editors who were on the series too, because we did not shoot this in the order in which it aired.
Right.
And so we had to really make sure in post that everybody looked like they knew they've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
And our very first episode is like, I can tell it's the first episode. You know,
I'm going to go back and watch it
lot.
again now.
It was actually, if you liked it, was the Muskoka episode, not the Okanagan Valley. It was the Muskoka one. And go back and rewatch it, and you'll be like, oh yeah, now I see.
Right.
You know, that first shoot, you're running 2 hours over every day, and you know, a lot of trial and error, and like, oh, I didn't think that was going to go that way. So.
One of the things I learned, and if I were a youngster and maybe in college, and Paul, this may be something you want to do at home. Is that Canadians call what we call herbs, they call herbs.
Herbs.
And I you know, and part of me was like, all right, a good game would be, you know, to do a shot every time that Dennis says herb instead of herb. And
I can't tell you how much I call it mail. Obviously, it's not like letters coming in the mail. How many emails,
feedback,
tweets, comments. How do these people know it's herbs, not herbs? And I'm like, you know, not everybody is from the United States of America specifically. Obviously, Canada's North America. Don't come at me.
Don't at me.
Don't at me on that. But
I mean,
guys,
it made me smile.
If this is your criticism, I'm like,
right.
Let's move on.
It made me smile looking at calling plants herbs.
Yeah. like tiny men named her.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we got her here.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you know, he was great. They were all great, and again, they're so nice. And as you said, no shouting in the kitchen. You know, it was really, really, you know, the I will go back and look at that first episode though, because that'll be interesting to see. I'll watch it again. One of the other questions I think people watching it probably had was, you know, you clearly made investments in various degrees in the restaurants, as part of the makeover. Did they pay for that? Did you pay for that? Where did that money come from?
No, it was all from our production budget, and each restaurant had the same exact amount of money. So we weren't looking at, for example, yeah, like in St. Lucia, that was kind of like a to the studs rebuild, which came a little bit as a surprise when we got on the ground. It was one of those situations where you pull one thing apart and three things also come with it. You know, it got the exact same amount of attention and love and care as the Finland did what the Finland restaurant got. And the Finland restaurant was, you know, easily 10 times the size. We were very fortunate, and you'll see if you watch credits and the thank yous, there were some trade outs with paint and things like that. Like any production, you know, you guys are smart, marketing savvy people. You can tell when a painter's t-shirt with the painting company is, you know, in the shot and that sort of thing. So there were some make goods like that. We were really lucky, for example, for in some locations, Hawaii just comes to mind immediately. Wayfair donated some things in exchange. That's just the nature of the beast. You watch Top Chef and they're all using Calphalon and they remind you every episode. But that said, every episode is budgeted for, you know, a similar dollar amount. So then we go about the same way.
Then my guess would be that the Stiegl Brewery in Austria contributed something towards that, because they were all over that, and it's my favorite beer. I mean, it's
what actually no, it's just that prevalent in Austria.
Okay, because it was on that. You showed that sign so many times, and every time you did the bar, I said to my wife, "There's Stiegl glasses, there's Stiegl taps, there's even a Stiegl refrigerator."
They're just everywhere. Exactly. No.
Well, Paul,
came with the restaurant. Yeah.
It's the best beer if you can find it on the planet. Just between us.
You like it that much?
Yeah, I do. I can go pull a can out of my refrigerator right now and show you.
I mean, I don't want to do that right now because it feels a little awkward, but maybe in the after show.
In the after show, yeah, you're right. It'd be a little awkward. I'll pull it out in the after show because I don't want people to think I'm just making this stuff up.
Oh goodness, Courtney, I want to hear about the stuff that you're working on. We've got Triage. You'd mentioned there's some stuff in Malta again, which was a beautiful, picturesque, you know, backdrop. Everything about Malta was spectacular. So I'd love to hear what you're working on, what's coming down the pipe. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So since I already mentioned the ABC show, I'll just go a little deeper into that. It's a medical drama Right now, a pilot order, fingers crossed it becomes a series order. We're very, very lucky. The pilot was ordered pre-COVID. Everything hit the skids during, the height of it. And we're super fortunate that we are one of the productions that is back up and running, and we are scheduled to shoot. Hopefully nothing else goes south. Hopefully the pandemic continues to get better. And we do shoot in November. Our director is John Chu.
Mm-hmm.
He directed In the Heights, which was supposed to come out 4th of July weekend, delayed because of COVID. Previously, Crazy Rich Asians, super talented guy. Really amped to have him on board. He's speaking of like bringing cinematic touches to television. He's definitely going to be able to do that. He's not afraid of big ideas. And this show is a big idea. It tells the story of a surgeon who, through 3 different decades of her life, and it's played by the same actors. So it's an ambitious show. We need an ambitious director. We definitely got one. So super lucky.
Cool.
Does it go back and forth in an episode? I mean,
This Is Us. They kind of do that in that show a little bit.
They do that a little bit, and This Is Us for sure. We're kind of going to be bookended by the future, because the show's really, it's a medical drama, but what we're doing is we're saying the choices you've made before now have made you who you are. What does that mean for 10 years from now? So you and I can sit here and talk about how we were all different 10 years ago. Now, if we continue that conversation and try to predict how we're going to be 10 years from now, what if you could see that on screen? And that's what we're doing. We're giving you that glimpse.
Those are goosebumps. I mean, what a cool idea.
Thank you. I'm super excited about it. I can't, my company Out East Entertainment has been developing this one for 4 years. So,
wow. So there you go.
You thought the runway for Restaurants on the Edge sounded long. This is 4 years in the making. So, fortunate to see it finally, knock wood, come to life in November. And then we're also doing a feature film. It's Out East's first feature film.
Love
like
that.
I said, thank you. Set in Malta, called Faith, Hope, and Charity. And it is the story, it's rooted in the present. This woman, kind of inspired somewhat by a few people I know who, in their 40s or 50s take, a 23andMe and find out some family history that they didn't see coming. Like most people think they're going to find a second cousin. A lot of people find out they're Jewish. A lot of people find out that, they have this past they didn't know about. And so using that as a jumping off point, one of our protagonists does this, finds out that she's half Maltese, never knew it.
Right.
Goes to Malta in search of this family she didn't know she has, and in doing so, finds the sister of her grandmother that she didn't know existed. And the sister of her grandmother, who would technically be her great aunt, tells the story of her grandmother she never heard, that the two of them left England for Malta in the early days of World War II and got involved with these airmen. And this part's all true, by the way. There were a handful of British airmen holding the island from Mussolini's Italian Air Force. And all they had to do that was 3 leftover planes from World War I. Churchill was diverting all the planes to other arenas, kind of ignoring Malta, which wasn't really wise. People historically have referred to Malta as the best aircraft carrier money can buy. Because of where it's located.
Because where it's located
south
in
of
the
Sicily,
Mediterranean.
North of Africa, you can hold all of North Africa and Egypt if you can hold Malta, vice versa with Italy. And so these airmen protected Malta from the longest consecutive bombing sieges that took place in World War II with these outdated planes. And so we get into that historical story. Faith, Hope, and Charity were the names of those planes. That's why the film is named that. It's a film based on true events. It's not a documentary. So obviously we fictionalize this character who gets us into it. But then we're telling the story of these pilots who really were the bravest thing anyone had seen, and all the Maltese depended on them, while Churchill wasn't really showing them a lot of love.
That sounds like a great movie.
It does. Historic fiction. Love it.
It's interesting. We had an author on last season, Margaret Mullen, who who, and her book, Where the Angels Live, she talked about that, about her going back, finding out she has Jewish relatives. She's at the Holocaust Museum in Israel. And the whole book is her search for this lost part of her family in Austria. And you just, when you talked about going back to Malta and looking for lost family, reminded me, it's actually an awesome book. If you haven't looked at it,
there may be some interesting inspiration there, because what you just described, I thought the same thing. There's quite a bit of overlap. She discovered she's Jewish, and everything kind of unfolds from there, and really
how family members lost in concentration camp, and it explains her whole family. I mean, suddenly the way her parents behaved. I don't want to get on the book, but it was fascinating. Book. It was a fascinating book, and something might give you some inspiration as well.
Indeed.
Now, now I'm going to touch on a sad topic for Paul and I, and that's
oh, Chris, don't. I know where you're
that there are no current plans for season 3, at least on Netflix, for Restaurants on the Edge.
It's a sad topic indeed. Yeah, that is, Netflix is changing their strategy. A little bit's been written about it toward competition formats and celebrity-centered formats. And that's kind of what Netflix does. They change their strategies, and they're pretty public about it. And shows make it or don't based on that. There could be life for Restaurants on the Edge, to be determined. But that said, also it's can't really travel right now. It's just truthfully great. I wouldn't want to make a lesser show because of the restrictions that are in place, because that wouldn't be good for anybody either. So it's a moment. Just keep watching season 1 and 2.
It's just I would think Food Network or HGTV or Travel Channel. I mean, all those, because you can tell it's already. I mean, the episodes you've done are already cut for commercial breaks, and I imagine that's because
that's because
they ran in
part
Canada.
of that Canadian partnership is it had to air linear in Canada first, so you do cut it for commercial breaks with a very eagle eye. You are correct.
Well, I mean,
who am I on with?
That makes me angry with Netflix. My son, my oldest son, before he moved back to New York and got into marketing, worked on did movie production and in LA, and he had a saying that, it wasn't his saying, but he said the saying out there is Hollywood or network execs are short-term help making long-term decisions. That sounds like a little bit like the suits at Netflix. We don't expect you to comment on that, but from my perspective,
I will just say, if you would like to launch a marketing campaign in your spare time to bring the show back, I welcome it.
Well, Paul, maybe our listeners will help us and viewers will help us.
Sure, it'll all happen organically as a launch pad off of this show, which huge.
our huge viewership.
Let's see what they can do.
Right.
But maybe the suits will tune in and go, you know what, we really made a mistake there. There's so much of the globe that we have yet to fix restaurants. So
yeah.
But so okay, so you've got potentially, hopefully November, you've got Triage coming. The movie Faith, Hope, and
Charity.
I want to say Glory, but Charity makes much more sense. When might we see that? Has that even gone? Is that in just pre-production now?
That's in pre-production. We're planning on shooting in March, so it could potentially be, a winter release the following year. So depending on, distributors and things like that.
Right. So you really are built. I mean, we sort of preface this as Courtney building a franchise around a program, but it's really clear that you are building a entertainment franchise or brand. I mean, when people talk about Out East now, it's with a track record of successful either things in the works or things that have already, I mean, that's got to be changing. Your conversations have to be easier as you build this brand and this entertainment brand, right?
Right.
100%. We launched with a straight to series order that aired on DirecTV when it was DirecTV, called Rogue. Went 5 seasons. Sandy Newton starred in it. and it's like you have your big launch, and then people know who you are, and you build and you build and you build, and then there was a long time where we were just developing, and then a few things hit at once, and everyone thinks like, oh wow, it's like, well, we've been working on that for a while.
Right, it's like overnight sensation.
We're very fortunate.
Like,
yeah. I mean, you've heard the joke 1,000 times, like overnight success, 5 years in the making.
Right.
That said, it's like we've built Audis with a very specific point of view, and that is, most generally speaking, we're not in the volume game. We're not just grabbing every idea, and if you have 100, 10 will hit. We don't have the bandwidth for that, nor do I have the interest in that, because each one of these is such a labor of love that if you don't truly love it, I at least just can't continue to fight for it, and can't continue to iterate and just do all the things you need to do to get it over the finish line beyond the initial interest. So, we're not in the volume game. We only take on projects we love. I only create projects I can see myself doing 10 years from now, because it might take 10 years to do. And
Paul and I have learned that.
yeah. So, and we try to do content that, while it's like a non-scripted show, a network television show, and a film, I think the common thread is they all look at something that might feel a little universal, but in a fresh way. We're always thinking about how much time we have left. But have you thought about it in the context of a medical show where you actually get a glimpse into that character's future? And is she right, and is she wrong? Mm-hmm. So now you can adjudicate her present in a different way. And the same thing with a, what could be considered, a historical war plot. Like, how do we look at that differently? Well, how did the relationships with those airmen who were going up and down, and the choices they made because they didn't know if they were coming back that day, how does that later affect generations? And that's why we have someone in modern day kind of being the mouthpiece for the story.
Right.
And just to close the loop on Restaurants on the Edge, that was telling stories of people too.
Yep.
But just through a restaurant.
Well, we usually end with a thing called the lightning round. But before we do that, I would love to just say, how do people who have listened to sort of our conversation today, how do they stay in touch with what you're doing, following Out East, entertainment? What's the best way to kind of know what's going on with Courtney?
LinkedIn, Instagram, although Instagram's mostly my kids, but they're really cute. So you'll probably just enjoy that too. But anytime there's a big announcement, you'll find it in one of those two spots. I'm on Twitter as well, but I moved on to be kind of more just like a Twitter lurker than a user, because it's just too exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to be angry to be on Twitter, and
sometimes I just want to grab some quick headlines quickly.
Right.
That's what I use it for. And if I'm there too long, the anger sets in, so I go away again. It's sporadic enough. I usually forget my password between logins. So Instagram and LinkedIn.
That's fantastic.
Perfect.
And it's Courtney Hazlett. Very creative handles. Yeah.
But actually, there was one question, Paul, and then I'll get to lightning round.
Yeah.
I'll explain lightning round. Unless I missed it, did you mention who you have cast for the lead in Triage?
We're casting right now. So no, you didn't miss it. We are casting right now. Hopefully should have an announcement in a week or so. So check out those platforms.
Maybe we'll get to, maybe you can feed it to us first and we can announce it on the podcast.
We'll push it out for you.
Get you guys the exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We love exclusives. So far we've had all of none. So
I'll let the ABC publicist know.
Yeah. That's good.
Tell them, it will be very respectful.
I'll tell them you're waiting.
we'll be on the lookout for that. So on to lightning round. So lightning round, I have 5 words. I read them out one at a time. You give me the first thing that pops to your mind. It could be a word, it could be a sentence. And typically, I have answers, Paul has answers in mind. If you go off the rails, we'll come back and talk about how, why we think you went off the rails.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right.
So, okay, lightning round.
Okay.
First one, email.
Inbox 0.
Oh.
Okay. Number 2. Well, this is purportedly a show about email marketing. Had to get that in there.
Which I know so much about. Yeah.
Right. Our suits will be happy. Hey, they talked about email. Second word, fault.
Fault? Like FAULT, like fault?
Yeah.
I know where you're going, Marriott.
Supposed to be quicker than this.
Accept it when it happens.
Oh.
All right, we might be circling back
We're
to
gonna
that one.
circle back to that one, Chris.
Well, there's a couple more that we might have to. Number 3, sandwich.
Convenient.
Okay. Cajun.
Cajun? Oh, I love the Cajuns. I went to school in New Orleans. I just think of all that.
Okay. Last one, Mario's.
Mario's. I'm drawing a blank. What is the spread with these? Did you just like
I have no idea.
have a dartboard somewhere?
No. Wow, the first time I've been attacked. No, there's a rhyme and a reason.
This is not
Right.
the first time you've been
I
attacked,
think
Chris.
I'm sitting here thinking more like, what does one have to do with the other, and like, what am I missing?
Well, they don't have to be. Well, in fact, there's a couple of Pittsburgh references in here.
Oh.
There's a California.
Mario Lemieux. See, I didn't really grow
No, that would have been acceptable. No, I'm talking about Mario. I'm talking about Mario's, the bar downtown Pittsburgh. Because Courtney's a Pittsburgh native, folks. So if you're wondering why is he focusing on Pittsburgh, Mario's where they serve fish bowls of beer.
So the drinking age in Pittsburgh, as I think all the country now, is 21. I left there at 18, and I assure you, I never had a sip of alcohol before I was 21.
Oh, sure.
Well,
So Mario's the thing. I don't know.
None of us did. Well, if you're visiting Pittsburgh, if you're visiting Courtney's hometown, Mario's serves fish bowls of beer. The sandwich, it's that.
Oh,
the sandwich
Primanti
also
Brothers.
Pittsburgh. Yes.
That's disgusting.
What was the name again?
Primanti Brothers. So you get your sandwich, but then they put like the coleslaw on it
Yep.
and the French fries, and all
Yep.
of that is between the bread. It's a scandalous opinion to have, my opinion of it. But really, where my head went is my children refuse to eat sandwiches. Like, they've never eaten a sandwich. And I just every lunchtime, I'm like, why can't we have a sandwich? Why do I have to like grill some salmon?
Well, just to prove, I like to watch a lot of food shows. I've seen, that's where I learned about that sandwich, at least in a couple. And the reason they put everything on between the bread is because truckers. They were truckers. They could only eat with one hand. They had to drive, so they put the coleslaw on French fries. But so you were covered on that one.
Okay.
Fault. Paul, what was I looking for on fault?
California, Chris, you were looking at the fault lines.
Earthquakes.
San Andreas would have been the.
See, I did have that in the back of my mind, but then I was like, is this a question about accepting blame? And like, yes, you should sometimes.
We're not finger pointing here.
I went deep. I went deep. Yeah.
We're much more. We're much more low right now. That's a little too esoteric. It's beyond my capabilities of making that connection.
Yeah.
And then Cajun, yeah, because I knew you went to Tulane.
Yeah.
So there was email again. That was the only one that made.
That was the sponsor required.
We're humoring our suits.
Well, but also you said inbox zero, and I mean that totally fits with what you described minute by minute, sort of the show. Someone who's inbox zero, yeah, I would imagine as a builder that would all be critical.
I aspire to it every morning, and I fail every night, but I aspire to it.
Well, I think that's it. I think we've, unless have we missed anything that you?
I don't think so. I think you covered it, and I'm flattered that you asked me to be a part of this, and thank you for indulging my upcoming projects and everything. And I'm just, nothing makes me happier or more grateful that in your spare time you indulged in my art. And so I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving us hours of again, what we could view, as you said, with my wife, with any of the kids at home. We love the show, and that's why we were so excited that you agreed to be on. So we're very grateful that you would share.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I'll just add one thing to that, just for giggles. in the Slovenia episode, you do some foraging, forest craft. Since that, me and my kids have gone out in the woods in Tennessee with a field guide to figure out what we can forage and what we can't.
I love that.
On a pretty regular basis. And so, to your point, yeah, it's.
Oh, that fills my heart. That's great.
And he hasn't poisoned any of his kids yet. So
and they're all still alive.
Most
yeah,
of them,
they're all. We're happy to report they're all still alive, and out of the ICU. So
yeah.
I have some news Facebook groups that help me identify things, so I'm not feeding them things they shouldn't eat.
That's very good.
Thanks
Very
again.
wise.
Really appreciate it.
My
very much,
pleasure.
Courtney.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we're back.
And we're back. I want to touch on first, just to prove to everybody, because I mentioned in that episode that I'm a big fan of Stiegel beer, which was featured prominently in the Austrian episode. And there's my
and I would say cheers, Chris.
Cheers.
There you go.
So I do have Stiegel beer. I don't make these things up. We want you to know when Paul and I say things, it's true.
It's true, Chris. 100% true.
We don't make it up. So
we might.
Producer David, you had an assignment after last week.
Yeah, Chris. There's been a lot of watcher feedback.
Yeah, in fact, I think there's certain school districts that are covering U.S. history and the Civil War period, and we're planning to tune into this podcast to get informed about the Mason-Dixon line. If you recall last week, you asked what that was, and Paul and I thought it was a good learning experience. We could tell you.
Right, we could have.
We could have told you, but we thought it would be better if you took it upon yourself to learn and come back and tell us.
Right.
So what did you learn about the Mason-Dixon line? Let's talk about that.
Thank you, Chris. I want to thank you both for encouraging me to do the research on this. This is one of those things that I really thought I kind of knew, but then, when I was put to task, I really had no idea what I was talking about. And so I did the research and I fact-checked, which is more important now than ever. And I prepared just a really brief, just kind of explanation of what Mason-Dixon line is, the history behind it. And so if you guys will indulge me, I'd like to just read through this real quick. It shouldn't take more than 20, 30 minutes.
Okay, I think that's reasonable.
We got all time in the world.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks. Okay. The Mason-Dixon line is a demarcation line between 4 U.S. states, forming part of the borders of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and Hawaii. During the latter half of the American Civil War, General James P. Mason of the Union Army led his infantry and cavalry directly into an ambush, spearheaded by Confederate General Tommy the Tank Dixon, along with what we now refer to as the Mason-Dixon line. The battle took place over 85 long, bloody hours until the bright light of the Virginian sun shone brightly upon the snow-laden battlefield. The screams turned to silence, and the gunshots turned to bird songs. The battle was not yet finished, but it was clear to all that remained that it was Christmas morning. General Mason and General Dixon's infantry and cavalrymen set down their firearms and set aside their differences and began a friendly game of team hopscotch. By Christmas Day's end, hopscotch squares lined the horizon, creating the Mason-Dixon line that would later be used to survey the borders between the aforementioned states. The icing on top of this Christmas wartime miracle was the lifelong friendship that blossomed between Generals Mason and Dixon, which remains solid even now among their offspring. Every year, the Masons and the Dixons gather along their titular line and partake in the great American historic team hopscotch tradition we all know and love. That's it. Thank you, guys.
No words.
The music added a particular authenticity.
And I didn't realize it stretched all the way to Hawaii. That was
Yeah, I did not either. It was Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Hawaii. So, I have a lot of questions about that, but I'm not sure I'm going to get straight answers. So I think we're going to have to say, there'll be a test next week.
Well, and Tommy the Tank Dixon also, it seemed like there might have been a cultural reference there. I was unaware.
I think this may have come first and been been an inspiration for anything to come later.
Nice to see. Yeah, and then the hopscotch squares that eventually became the Mason-Dixon line.
Right. The sort of chalk. I'm visualizing chalk squares that lay from the horizon to the horizon.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, and I don't want to belabor this, but I think the most encouraging thing for me out of that was just the generational friendship that's taken place between the Masons and the Dixons.
Right. Up to this day. I mean, it's heartfelt. I mean, oftentimes we view history through a cold, detached lens of time, and rarely do we have it brought to life in such a I'll say loving.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Chris.
Loving way.
Right.
And I think we have a lot to thank producer Dave for making us again realize that history is not just facts, it's
comes to
emotion
life.
And
it's life.
It's people, and sometimes it's just made up. But enough about that. Enough about that. I want to say again how much we enjoyed having Courtney on today.
Yeah, sure.
Fabulous show and fabulous lady, and one is clearly there's going to be a lot of good content coming from her in the future, and we'll all be on the lookout for that.
Well, and thank you, Chris, for asking to see if they had cast the lead yet, because I'm pretty sure both you and I are still in the running. Now, it wasn't uncomfortable for her to say it right there.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm fully expecting my phone to be ringing this afternoon telling me I got the part. I'm pretty sure that's what they say.
Well, maybe, but I was kind of hoping that they'd cast the three of us as the pilots in the movie.
Ooh, I'd go to Malta.
So I'm kind of hoping that she kind of got her vibe today, and even if they've cast them, say we need to look at Paul and Chris and
David.
And there's always the kid,
or we could be the stuntmen.
Ooh, the guys who get shot out of the sky.
Right, like of the three, I'm gonna call Faith to start, and so you guys can fight over Hope and Charity.
I don't want to be Charity. I'll be Hope.
David, are you okay with that? Because
sounds good.
Listen, his getting cast in this movie is Charity. So what better than having him play Charity? So no, I think that's totally appropriate. Because there's always the kid. In all these war movies, there's the grizzled old veteran.
Yeah.
There's the cagey, mover and shaker. And then there's the kid.
Who's
that's you.
Mover and shaker?
You're the mover and shaker.
What are you then?
I'm the grizzled old vet. You're the up and comer.
Veteran, yes.
I'm the Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. You're the
Matt Damon.
No, or Ed Burns. Or Ed Burns.
Ed Burns. I would take Ed Burns.
I think you'd play a very good Ed Burns. I think I'd do a good Tom Hanks. And producer David would be the guy who lets the German go. And then the typist, and lets the German go, and he comes back and kills his buddy. That would be your role, I think. Or the doctor who gets killed early.
Sorry.
But yeah, sorry. Anyway, that's it for this week's, folks. Thank you for joining us on our Builders series. We've had Kalpit Jain, great builder of a international marketing technology company. We've had Courtney Hazlett, builder of not just a tremendously popular series on Netflix, but building out a production company that's got their hands in scripted series, in movies, as well as shows on Netflix. And we're going to be looking to bring you more and more interesting builders as the season goes on. So keep your eyes right on this station.
Yep. Like and subscribe. Let us know what you like. Email us at emailgeekscoffee@gmail.com. We'll keep doing it, providing you keep telling us you like it.
See you next week.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.